Game 2 action between the Cardinals and the Royals coming up here in just about several hours from now. I am Ethan Hannaford. He is Stefan Caray. This is Cards Hub 365. We appreciate you joining us on this lovely Saturday morning. Just a reminder that Cards Hub 365 is powered by Gray Bar here on Sports Hub STL and presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Stefan, the Cardinals continue to stay hot last night with another solid win against another solid team in the Kansas City Royals. And right now, it just kind of seems like the team is playing at a very confident manner, and that they are kind of setting the tone for what they want to happen. And the result has been pretty solid here the last couple of weeks.
No doubt about it. I mean, you look at how they've performed on this road trip, 6-1. They're guaranteed a winning road trip. I think coming into this, you were happy if they went 5-4 and stayed above 500. Right now, they're gaining a ton of ground on the Cubs. They're gaining a ton of ground on the wild card, and they're giving themselves a little bit of leeway when they get back home against a team like the Detroit Tigers, who just refuse to lose ever, and the Arizona Diamondbacks, who have been year in and year out over the last couple seasons a postseason, if not World Series contender. So now that you're 5 games up on the 500 mark, you are really in a good position to keep this going, to not really feel like you're sinking and treading water like they were at the beginning of the year.
I don't know if you saw those comments I just threw up. I think people are starting to drink the Kool-Aid, Stefan. You get Michael saying that he's looking forward to another 10 spot today. Xavier is already throwing out 2025 world champions. So the people are feeling it right now. They are excited, which is refreshing to have back in St. Louis because it has been a couple of years. And then Chewy bringing up that they should have never let us get Ivan Herrera back because we are just different with him. And now let's go ahead and let's talk about it a little bit, because Ivan Herrera has been absolutely exceptional since returning from the injured list. We know how good he was in the first week of the season prior to dealing with the bone bruise in his right knee. But, I mean, it has to be encouraging not only for fans, but especially for the coaching staff that you are getting the same hitter in Ivan Herrera following 4 weeks of time on the IL. And while it is a small sample size, I have to imagine that that means something, that he's picking up right where he left off, like he didn't miss any time at all.
I was about to make the same point. You see a lot of hitters at the beginning of the year, they go on torrid streaks. They're hitting the ball all over the diamond. They're hitting close to 400, and then they come back down to earth a little bit. Well, he didn't get the chance to have those consistent at-bats because of his injury. But to your point, Ethan, him coming back from injury shows a consistency in his approach at the plate, which is repeatable. And the fact that it's repeatable means that regardless of who's on the mound, regardless of how the team is playing, Ivan Herrera is going to hit. I mean, 405 average, 5 home runs, 18 runs batted in, had a 3-hit performance last night. He's been sort of that rock in the middle of the order, that stabilizing force that gives this lineup so much more of a fear factor to it for opposing pitchers. And I think that as you get him to continue to build his confidence, you're looking at one of the players that maybe was overlooked or maybe even underlooked a little bit by Cardinals fans coming into the last few years, because you talk about Donovan being the heart and soul of this team. Well, maybe Herrera is that next power hitter, that next great power hitter to wear the birds on the bat. And I think that right now all he's showing is he has every capability to do so if you get him out there consistently.
There is no hiding that Ivan Herrera has been one of the better hitting catchers in baseball here in obviously 2025. But even if you go back to 2024, obviously his amount of time, his amount of at-bats are smaller than the large amount because of, time back in AAA at times. But he has hit the entire time pretty much that he's been at the major league level. Went back and saw some numbers from his numbers since 2024 at the plate, batting .313, a .385 on-base percentage, a .493 slugging percentage. That tallies up to an .877 OPS. All those are first in baseball among catchers since 2024. Now, I know you have to take that stat with a grain of salt because he has so many fewer at-bats. But also, he also is first in weighted runs created plus, 47 points above league average in that stat. A .380 weighted on base average. So Ivan Herrera is lengthening out this lineup. He is having impactful at bats. There's no doubt about that. And it kind of brings up the next interesting question. We don't have the lineup out today. We won't have it out. We're still 8 hours away from first pitch, so we won't get it likely during the show. But the Cardinals have continued to bat him in the 6th spot, and it just goes to show how deep this lineup is. I think there's two ways that you could look at this, Stefan. You could either look at this as the Cardinals lineup is working the way it is right now. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Or you can look at it and say, like, well, there's no hiding that Wilson Contreras and Ivan Herrera have been your 2 best hitters. Do you perhaps consider moving them up in the lineup? Your thoughts?
I think for me, you look at a guy like Nolan Arenado, who maybe isn't hitting quite as much for average as we're used to seeing, but look at his production with runners in scoring position. I don't see them moving him off of his position in the order, whether it's 3rd or 4th, because he's getting opportunities with runners in scoring position. He could strike out 3 times, but if he drives home 2 in that one opportunity, then he's done his job. And he has done his job more often than not. He's comfortable in that spot. I wouldn't really think about moving him down in the order, especially if he starts to struggle, because you want to keep him consistent. Looking at what happened with Wilson Contreras and Mason Wynn, they tweaked a few things, but Wilson was consistently hitting in that 3rd spot or consistently hitting in the middle of the order. And he started the season 0 for 22. Now he's been the best hitter on the team. Ivan Herrera can make that argument. Mason Wynn, as soon as they put him in the 2nd spot, he became one of the best hitters on this team. So I think that there are some lineup tweaks that you could make, but right now the Cardinals are 6-1 on the road. They've won 11 of their last 12 games. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. We might as well keep rolling the way that we've been rolling, and watching how Ollie Marmol makes this lineup that has a lot of mouths to feed work. And that's a huge testament to what he's been able to do in feeding all those mouths and having the successful recipe. Ethan, you're muted.
I sure am, and that's that usually is a big important thing, right? When trying to do a podcast, isn't it? What I was saying was that what I was saying is that last night the Cardinals following that 10-3 win, the numbers with runners in scoring position continued to improve. I think they were 5 for 11 last night with the RISP, and we all know about Ivan Herrera's big bases loaded clearing double. So I have some numbers here just on the 2024 to 2025 comparison with runners in scoring position. Last year, this team was bottom 3 in baseball in batting average and OPS with runners in scoring position. This year, they're top 10 in both of those categories. They dropped from 229 to 260, or they raised from 229 to 264, and 644 to 757 with runners in scoring position. It's even a bigger difference with the bases loaded. They go from 188th and second last in baseball to 355, which is good for 6th in baseball among batting average. And then a 570 OPS last year, and now 889. That is prior to Ivan Herrera's bases clearing double last night. So I have to imagine it's an even bigger jump now. So it just goes to show that this team is getting it done with runners in scoring position. Who have been the biggest contributors with runners in scoring position? Ivan Herrera, there's no hiding how impactful his bat has been. Check this, Stefan. With runners in scoring position, Ivan Herrera is batting .471 and has an OPS over 1,400. My God, it is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. He just hits in all situations. And here's the thing, too. I know this is technically the 3rd season that he has been in the majors, but or that he has seen major league time. I believe it might even be the 4th that he's seen major league time. But he has been so cool, calm, and collected. And you're seeing it in the consistency with his approach, but also just in his mannerisms as well. And you wouldn't be able to tell with him, and for a lot of these guys, in fact, that they're so young and so early in their major league careers because of the way that they approach the big situations. Victor Scott is another great example. Victor Scott's batting .324 with an OPS over 1,000 with runners in scoring position. Pedro Pages has an .833 OPS. Brendan Donovan, 814. Arenado's at 747. Newbar and Burleson are in the high 600s. Wynn is at 662 as well. So, but it's young guys in majority that are carrying you right now with runners in scoring position, and I think that is a very commendable stat and is very telling of the who is contributing in those moments right now for this Cards lineup.
It's what you wanted to see. It's what you wanted to see out of this team. Look, I think everybody's expectations for what this team was going to be in a year where runway was the operative word, they expected this to be a 500 or maybe a little bit worse team. They're not that. They're not that. They're showing that they're not that. They're beating really good teams, and they're beating really good teams in a variety of ways. Their starting pitching has been sensational, from Michaelis to Gray, just all through the rotation. They've been sensational. They're figuring out the bullpen pieces. Offensively, here's a quick number for you. Last year, the Cardinals scored 10 or more runs 7 times. They've already done it 5 times this year, and they've done it in back-to-back games. So this team is finding ways to deliver. They're finding ways to make things happen, and they're doing it against really good teams. Now, a really big test is going to be next week. What do they do against the Tigers and Diamondbacks? Do they continue this, right? But because you're 5 games up with the potential to be 6 up here in a few days, you can afford to lose a series and not hurdle all the way back to 500. You just can't get swept. And this doesn't seem like a team that's going to get swept anytime soon, knock on wood, because they're playing the brand of baseball that they're playing. They're running the bases effectively. They're making teams pay for their mistakes. And maybe an incredibly underrated aspect of this team, and I know that people talk about it, but I think that it's this team's calling card, is how well they play defense. Yesterday, Nolan Arenado made 2 tremendous plays, one on a line drive from Bobby Witt Jr. that saved a run. I mean, all across the diamond, they catch everything, and that has allowed the starting pitchers to be so comfortable allowing the ball to be put in play, because you don't have high strikeout guys. You have Sonny Gray, who can do it. You have Liberatore, who has shown that he can do it. But the rest of them are more pitch to contact players. And because of this team, the way that this defense is assembled, it's good to have a pitcher like that, because you allow this team to play to their strengths, which is glove first, and they hit as well.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about one of the most important things for young players to learn, and it's how to win. And people overthink that far too often, right? Because, depending on where you are in the minor leagues and what organization you're in, and it can be in some spots a little bit more individual focused, right? Because everyone has the same goal, but you kind of forget about there are areas where you can forget about that team aspect a little bit. And right now, this Cardinals team, the last couple of years, it's these young guys still are learning what it looks like to win at the major league level. I think one of the biggest adjustments that we have seen this team make, even when you look at last year and the beginning of this year, is the Cardinals showed promising signs in 2024 at times where, they were able to string together a couple of wins. I think at one point they had a 4 or 5 game winning streak last year. But the problem was it felt like they had to work so hard for those wins, but at times could just, if it fell apart, it fell apart very quickly. And we saw that early in the season with, just mentioning it doesn't feel like this team's going to get swept right now. Earlier in the season, which it's funny we're saying that, we've played 45 games, but 20 games ago when they get swept by the Mets, and even further back when they get swept by Boston, both in loud atmospheres, ruckus atmospheres, playoff atmospheres that you're going to be dealing with. And it looked like a young club out there. It looked like a young club that wasn't used to playing in front of those type of crowds. And everything unraveled pretty quickly. Like game to game, you weren't able to adjust on the mistakes against good teams. Obviously, there's no hiding that the Mets are one of the best 3 teams in baseball this year. But you've seen them adjust in that. I thought this Philly series was very telling. I mean, that was a tough crowd to play in front of a very good team, one of the best lineups in baseball. And the Cardinals battled back from adversity after losing a tough game one of the doubleheader. They're down 5-1 to start off game 2, and they adjust and the bats go off. I thought that was a very telling game for me, and that shows me that a team is adjusting and learning what it looks like to win, to battle and play in some of those games in front of those tough crowds. Hopefully, on this homestand, the Cardinals are doing the same thing for a young team like the Detroit Tigers. Now, obviously, they've been consistent, had a lot of success early in the season, but there's no reason that St. Louis can't be that either. The home crowd they have been of old. Hopefully, right, the fans have a little bit of more trust in this team and are gonna show up here on this upcoming homestand. So perhaps that brings up some exciting debates. But I thought it was interesting that you brought up that it doesn't look like this team is going to get swept right now. And I would say that I would agree, but that's also something I'm not saying 2.5, 3 weeks ago. That's something that the team has made a very recent adjustment in, I feel like, and I guess has grown in.
I agree. And the numbers support that point. The first 22 games of the season, the Cardinals were 9-13. They scored 103 runs and allowed 103 runs, which is maddening considering how many close games they played in. They lost each of the first 5 one-run contests that they played. Now, let's fast forward to now. 23 games since, 16-7 record, 119 runs scored, 81 runs allowed. That's plus 38. That's one of the best records in baseball in that span. The first 11 road games, 1-10, second worst record in the National League, only behind the Colorado Rockies. They allowed just under 7 runs per game, which was the worst in the National League on the road. Last 13 road games, they're 9-4. That's the best record in the National League, and 2.93 runs allowed. That's the lowest in the National League. So they have completely turned things around. I asked Mike Claiborne when he thought this happened. He said it was during the Mets doubleheader. I think it happened a little bit earlier than that, actually. I think it was when Ollie Marmol was ejected in Cincinnati. There was a huge, huge turning point for this team, and I think the energy started to change right there and then. They came back to a gauntlet of a homestand and found a way to win. They really have played well since that moment, and it's just fun to watch them put it all together. Again, you talk about how everybody's buying in. I love that. I love to see that, and I haven't been around the Cardinals long enough to really plead to the fans that they should come out to the ballpark, but this is the type of baseball that people pay to see. This is the type of baseball, regardless of if there's no Albert Pujols or Yadier Molina on this team, you might have the next one on this roster right now that's with the club for a long time. And you get to tell your kids and your grandkids that you saw Ivan Herrera when he first started. You got to see Mason Wynn in the early stages of his career figuring out how to be a big leaguer. And by the way, there are less growing pains this year over the last 2 seasons. So let's get Busch packed out and let's see what this team can do when they have the full support of St. Louis, because right now they're doing it. They're doing everything you could ask them to do and then some.
There's the PSA from Stefan Caray right here on Cards Hub 365. I'm Ethan Hannaford, and we appreciate you guys joining us. We have a couple of questions in the comment that we're going to get to in just a moment, but not before we tell you about DraftKings. We, as mentioned, the Cards Hub 365 is powered by Gray Bar here on Sports Hub STL, but is presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours, so be sure to download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play. $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
He is Stefan Caray. I am Ethan Hannaford. This is Cards Hub 365 on Sports Hub STL. Let's go ahead and let's get to some questions in the chat. Stefan, we'll start off with this one. We've been talking about Ivan Herrera yet. BO asking, do you guys think Herrera is becoming a superstar? And if so, why isn't he getting the credit he deserves yet? Small sample size, question mark? Stefan, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's probably a very fair point, is that it is a small sample size. Now, you look at his production and you factor in the injury and the consistency post-injury, and the numbers top to bottom have been great. It's not like this year is the coming out party of Ivan Herrera. The writing has been on the wall for him to be this type of player. He's showing it with the power. He's showing it on a team that has lacked a little bit of slug, and his return has instantly changed the way that pitchers have to attack this order. He gives them so much more balance. He gives them so much more power in the middle of the order. And the big concept nowadays is lineup protection. Think about how much easier it is for the guys in front of Ivan Herrera to come up to the plate. Say Wilson Contreras or Alec Burleson in the 5th spot comes up and says, okay, runners first and second, there's nobody out. I'd like to move him over, but if I don't, we've got Herrera here that can do it, which makes you looser at the plate, which means you're delivering. And Burleson might be the perfect example, because look at how he's hit since Ivan Herrera has returned. So I think that he adds more than just the RBIs. He adds more than just the home runs, the hits. He just provides a certain level of consistency and steadiness to this order that they needed and lacked a little bit in the early stages of this year.
Absolutely. I think that was perfectly said. So we'll continue moving on here with the next couple of thoughts here. We haven't even mentioned that Miles Mikolas is getting the start on the bump tonight in Kansas City for game number 2, and the first pitch at 6:10. A TBD on the Royals starter after Seth Lugo. They're going to experience in his last start. I believe it was a hyperextension of one of his fingers. So as a result, he's going to miss a start. That hurts my fantasy team. I'm not gonna lie, but if it aids the Cardinals, then I'm willing to let my fantasy team take a hit tonight, Stefan. So we'll have to wait and see. But we got some people in the chat wondering about Miles Mikolas, the work that he's been doing. Leo saying, good ballpark for Miles to play in tonight. And then Mark also saying, what should we expect from Miles tonight? We know that Mikolas in large part has been excellent this year. I don't know if we can continue to expect him to pitch at a sub 2.7 ERA workload here for the remainder of the year. When you exclude that Boston outing, that's around where the ERA is. But I most definitely would also say that this is a different pitcher that we've seen the last 2 seasons. Somewhere in between there is probably a realistic expectation by year's end in my mind. But specifically tonight against this Royals lineup, what do you expect from Miles Mikolas, Stefan?
Yeah, I think the thing about the Royals lineup is the majority of the guys that can hurt you in that lineup are right-handed hitters. And you look at Miles' numbers against right-handed batters, they've been phenomenal. Last year against the righties, 287 average with a 490 slugging percentage. This year, they're hitting 181 with a 276 slugging. So if you could control the righties in that matchup, you're going to have success. He's done a really, really nice job at controlling the favorable side of the plate. Now, lefties have hit him pretty hard this season, but the swing and miss has been an attribute that has been lacking for Mikolas over the last few years. It's back. 5 strikeouts his last time out. He's getting whiffs. He's really pitching well. He has good frame jobs behind the plate by Pages, Pozo, or whoever it may be, and he's able to work all 4 quadrants of the zone and get in on those hitters. I think this is a lineup that if you don't let Bobby Witt, Salvador Perez, Vinny Pasquantino hurt you, you have a chance to keep the score pretty low. This team is averaging right around 3 runs per game over the last few weeks, but their pitching has been really good. That's a top 3 pitching staff in baseball for the Royals. As long as you can score, you have a good chance of winning. I know that sounds like layman's terms or maybe an oversimplification of the game of baseball, but it really is the truth when it comes to the Kansas City Royals. And all the Cardinals have been doing is scoring. We just hope that they're not getting all their runs out of the way too soon.
And they really set themselves up well with that win yesterday to start off the series. Now, not knowing who you're going to face, you could argue that is perhaps an extra challenge that you have to face. But it also means that you're probably either going to get a young guy that's coming up from AAA, or you're going to get some sort of bullpen start where a guy is not going to be able to go super deep on you. So, and the Cardinals have, proven to handle those situations this year pretty well in my mind that I can recall going back to the series against the Reds, even the Mets. So perhaps they're able to continue that tonight as we await and see who they end up facing. But I mean, those seem like the two outcomes, I guess, are the two ways that you could look at situations like that. Would you agree, Stefan?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that you factor in last night, Cole Reagan's having to leave the game earlier than he would like because of a lower body injury. This bullpen's already taxed.
Yeah.
And if you win this game, assuming it's a bullpen game, there's going to be no one available come Sunday. And that's going to be a huge advantage for the Cardinals. You win today, you think about the sweep tomorrow. Not suggesting that you aren't always thinking or hoping you can sweep a team, but this is a game of chess, not checkers. It is a much more difficult game, and it's the game within the game. Getting the starter out early, taxing that bullpen. We'll see what they do with Reagan's if he ends up having to go on the IL and they can bring somebody up from AAA, which, again, there are some talented pitchers in the Royals organization that will be available. The question is, are they willing to use them on short notice to get them from Omaha to Kansas City today? Now, that's probably why they're mulling over all their different options. The Cardinals are ready for just about anyone. It doesn't matter if it's a Cy Young Award winner or a Cy Young Award favorite. They seem locked in, and Brant Brown's game planning has been as good as any hitting coach in Major League Baseball.
Ricky Summer is commenting and saying, do you want to be playing your best baseball in May? I didn't know if I imagine that someone out there was going to be complaining about something with this team. Stefan, your thoughts on this one?
Well, I think that I saw a really interesting comment on Twitter, and it's something that I think all of us have felt. These games in May, it's a win in May, it's a win in May. The comment was, yeah, but that's one less win you have to get in September, which is the truth. And we haven't really even started division play against the teams that are going to be running the table in the NL Central. We haven't played the Milwaukee Brewers very much, have not played the Cubs yet. So if you can control the Cubs, if you can control the Brewers, the Pirates, the Reds, start winning in division, you're going to be all right. I think that this team needed to prove to themselves that they could win. Now, let's spin zone it a little bit, Ricky, and talk about what if the Cardinals were struggling here in May? What if instead of going 6-1 on this road trip and winning 11 out of 12, they had won 3 out of 12? Oh, and guess who they're greeted by when they get home next week? The Tigers and the Diamondbacks. That's becoming a free fall. That's a team that's 10 games under 500 and having to scratch and claw their way back to get to 500. They don't have to do that anymore. Now they've built some confidence. Now they have a chance to stack wins and continue to separate themselves from the rest of the pack in the NL Central and keep the confidence high. I see no reason to believe that wins in May won't translate to wins in July, August, September, because all it's going to do is encourage this front office to say, hey, maybe we go for it this year, a year earlier than we expected. Now, I don't know what they're going to do. I'm not going to suggest that I have any ideas that are better than what Chaim Bloom and John Mozeliak have, because they've done a nice job in committing to this season's plan. But the wins now are incredibly valuable, and I wouldn't trade them for anything.
And they're valuable for different reasons as well. And I mean, they're even more valuable because you're not a team that it was expected to compete. You're learning things every single day about this ball club, about guys that is going to go deeper and beyond 2025. And that, I think, is just as important as anything that could get done in October this year for the St. Louis Cardinals, which people don't have a lot of expectations. So I think that this year more than ever, you're taking the wins when you can get them. One, because the team wasn't expected to be anything special by year's end, but also because you're learning things about this team every single day. Is there ever a point by year's end where you're saying, well, if we, wouldn't have been playing our best baseball early in the season? No, you're not. You can't control when you're playing your best baseball. That is the ebbs and flows of the game. In 2015, when the Cardinals won 100 games, they were by far the best team in the first 2 months of the season. And I don't want to say it was 500 ball the rest of the way, but it wasn't nearly as dominant for the remainder of the season. You're not looking at that year and saying, well, if we wouldn't have been playing our best baseball early in the season, you're looking at that. And it's just a part of the game. You can't necessarily control that. Guys are going to go through ebbs and flows and hot stretches and cold runs. So I like to believe that to a certain extent, you can't always control when guys are feeling it at the plate as well as they are. But there's no reason, like you said, Stefan, that just because this team is playing well right now, that they can't keep that going and be playing good baseball later in the season as well. And that brings up another point that as we slowly begin to wrap up here, Stefan, is that, I was speaking with Ricky Horton a couple of days ago about this, about there isn't necessarily anything on this team right now that has you saying they're world beaters, right? Like, but there's nothing that on this team right now that has you saying like, this is going to be the kryptonite. This will be what gets them either. Early in the year, right? When you mentioned the losing of the 5-1 run ball games, it was the bullpen. They couldn't hold on to leads. But I think in large part, most people had solid expectations for the bullpen, and it feels like people are back to that. They've turned that corner, and I don't expect the bullpen to have an epic collapse again after they've turned it around of late. Do I think they're going to be as dominant as they have been? No, because no one can expect that. Do I think that this Cardinals team as a whole is going to continue winning at a 75% win rate like they have for the last 33, 34 games? No, because not even the Dodgers do that. But I think to expect that this team can continue to win at a consistent rate if the young guys, specifically in large part, continue to grow, continue to develop. They're not all going to hit as dominantly as they are right now in 12-game stretches. That's part of baseball. Is guys are feeling it at times, guys are not, as I just mentioned. But I don't see anything right now that is telling me this team can't continue to play good quality baseball and end up, in the mix for a Central Division title down the stretch here if you continue to see this style of play from them.
Last year, the team went 83-79, and everybody felt like the walls were closing in. Right now, you're a quarter of the way into the season. You're 5 games above 500. You're a game out of first place in a year where I don't think anybody expected them to be as good as they have been. Now, I'm sure the guys in the clubhouse expected them to be that good, but the important thing is progress and development in your young players. We've seen that so far. Progress in terms of adding to that win total. We've seen that so far. This team is in a completely different place at this time of the year than they were last year. And because of that, you can look at this squad and say, hey, they've taken some big steps, some big strides forward, and you can be excited for the future. If they play 500 ball or a couple games above 500 with a 5-game over 500 record the rest of the way, which is certainly possible, right? I'm not going to say that they're not going to have a bad month, but let's say they have 2 average months and then 2 above average months, or 1 really good month, 1 bad month, and then 2 above average months. Sure. This team is going to finish 11, 12 games above 500 and be right in the thick of it for a wild card spot, because this division is so wide open, because the NL Central is one of the most wide open divisions in baseball. And that's no disrespect to the other teams, but nobody knows who's going to win this division. It looked like the Cubs for a while. I'm not saying it won't be, but the Cardinals are really putting pressure on other teams. The NL West, the Dodgers are a great team. The Padres are a great team. The Giants are a great team. The Diamondbacks are a great team. And at some point, those 4 teams are going to beat the heck out of each other, and it's going to affect their wild card chances. The NL East is sort of the same way. So the Cardinals are in as good of a position as anyone to really let their youth be shown, to really let the under the radar, maybe the overlooking aspect of baseball be one of their best attributes and show the world what they're capable of doing.
One final question here before we wrap, and I think that you could argue this is the most important question that's getting brought up here. Tim asking, has Gorman's runway ran out? They haven't even been playing him. So let's go ahead and let's talk about the development specifically of Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker here of late, and how exactly, not I don't want to have the conversation, how are the Cardinals going to deal with them, because we don't know, right? But I think that we can kind of continue to look and point out at the trajectory that the team is heading in, and we can ask, how do Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker fit into that? I'm personally on the train of this. One of the biggest wins that could come from 2025 is having Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman figure it out. It is still a very young season. While the Cardinals have been playing well, there is no guarantees that this team is still playing right the same way come July. And that does now what I'm confident that they can, but it's too early to be making decisions about year's end and season in a season where you have to figure out if these guys are going to be a part of your lineup. And I think another good thing to bring up here, Stefan, is when you are so deep, when your lineup is so deep, and right now it really is, it's 1 through 7, and then you got Scott in the 9 spot. I mean, it's a deep lineup right now. It kind of affords you, it feels like, the luxury, the ability to be able to play these guys and not have there be nearly as much pressure on them to have to perform.
I agree. Now you look around the diamond, where's he going to play? Where's he going to play? And that is the tough question. Had they traded Arenado in the offseason like they had planned to, he'd be at third base and in his natural position, playing there almost every day, I'm sure. That didn't happen. And it's benefited the Cardinals more than it's hurt them that it didn't. But let's look around. Brendan Donovan looks like the best second baseman in baseball. That might be a hot take for some. Look at the numbers.
The outs above average, they tell a story.
Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers offensively. There's no reason why Brendan Donovan shouldn't be starting at second base come All-Star game time. Mason Wynn is the future of the franchise. Right now, he's the young, exciting prospect that people talk about. We expected it to be Jordan Walker a few years ago. Mason Wynn has taken over that role. At third base, you have potentially the greatest third baseman of our era, maybe the best defensive third baseman ever to play the game over there. He is such a huge force at the plate, yes, but defensively especially. So that's 3 spots. First base, you have Wilson Contreras, who you're trying to get action every single day so he gets up to speed with his defense because he's a bat-first player. He's played tremendous defense. So really there's nowhere to put Gorman at this point in time. And I think that's affected him. I think it has. I think the consistent bats have not been afforded to him in the same way that they were afforded to Contreras when he struggled at the beginning of the year, were afforded to Wynn when he struggled at the beginning of the year. Now, that's baseball. It's a tough game. It's difficult, and it's unfortunate because you want Gorman to be a successful big leaguer, and I think that he will be. But right now, this team has too many mouths to feed, and they have won too much to try and deviate from that plan. And I wouldn't be shocked to see if the runway idea changes a little bit if they continue to go on a run and start really separating themselves. 5 games above 500 is great, and I am a huge fan of that. But if they get to 7, 8, 9, 10 games above 500, then you start to look in the mirror and say, wait a minute, we have something here.
It's all going to be very interesting to see how it comes and unfolds, right? There's still a lot of baseball to be played. It is May 17th, but I don't know if a lot of people expect to be talking about the Cardinals in the way that we have this morning, Stefan, and it's been a blast to have you on. We appreciate you coming on, taking time out of your day. And but you know what? The last thing that I'll say before we wrap is, and Samuel said it right here: buy those tickets. Buy those tickets. This team has earned the opportunity, has earned the privilege, the honor to be supported by the fans. And I hope that some of these tough atmospheres that St. Louis has had to play in here to start off the season, that St. Louis can return back to that. Let's put away those frustrations with the fan, with the organization, and perhaps how things have been ran, because right now things are working and the team is playing well. And let's see if we can keep it going here in St. Louis. It's been a fun one this morning with you guys. As mentioned, Miles Michaelis on the bump today. First pitch in Game 2 of the series against the Royals, just down I-70, is at 6:10. Still waiting to see who will be pitching tonight for Kansas City. Lineups not out yet, so be sure to keep an eye on those, and we will have all the coverage for you this evening following hopefully what we will be the discussion about a Cardinals team winning their 5th straight series. He is Stefan Caray. I'm Ethan Hannaford. This has been Card Sub 365 on Sports Hub STL.